Hello, and welcome to Laundry Day. Laundry Day means sitting coldly huddled on top of the washer and dryer while absolutely no laundry gets done, but reading a story to console yourself. I am a mouse with no top half of the head, I guess. I can't do that with my foot. Whee! Um, Welcome as you're arriving. I am drinking a tea that is on its thrice brewing because getting a new tea bag is just too much work. I hope everybody had a good Easter and a good Saturday. A good time finding eggs and things to do on a Saturday. And yeah, I think Easter is a cool holiday in that it's got associated activities and games. I feel like Christmas is just like anything can be themed Christmas, but it doesn't have any like specific activities. Where Easter it's like dye eggs, make eggs, kill the leader of our religion and hang him, and then have a party. Hello Hannah. Um, yes. Grab your tea, grab your fettuccine, as I did, though it is not within reach currently. Prepare yourself for story time. You'll probably need to talk loudly since this computer is far. Okay, that's okay. Hello. Here is your daily hello. Hi. There it is. That was actually two. I don't know what the government is going to do when they hear we're overspending on our daily hellos. Anyways, I think it's story time. Because so many things happened in the last couple of readings. Just all the important things. So, we're going to continue reading important things. Eager and excited to continue the story. It might seem strange, living so close. This is chapter 2 of The Rest. It might seem strange, living so close to my old home for so long, but I never went at it. What was there but pain and memories, and didn't I have enough of those? But having finally let go of the idea of revenge, I found that I could now walk through those woods and look at the corpse of my childhood, the stone and wooden wreck, and feel nothing but small twinges of pain. The pain felt as though it belonged to someone else, as though it sprung into someone else's chest, and all I was experiencing were the faint twinges of sympathy. Walking into the house was a transition of light, the Mediterranean brilliance of outside becoming the dusty dim of inside. I was surprised by how much of the furniture had survived. Here was the table where my father and I had eaten dinner, blackened but still standing. Here was my bedroom where I had sat at the window waiting for my father's return. My bed was mostly undamaged. From there, I went into the rest of the house, the parts my father never really visited after my mother died. We didn't often discuss my mother's family, and as a child, I had thought about it much. But she must have come from extremely wealthy nobility because the estate was huge. Room after room that my father and I had ignored. Some of these rooms were bare, but others held the remains of well-made furniture and rich household items. I wanted to understand my family because in that moment I knew I had never known the shape of my history. And so I went carefully through the estate, room by room. I found a silver necklace, and I have no way of knowing if my mother ever wore it. But holding it felt a bit like touching her. Perhaps my father had given it to her, but my father had come from a merchant family and wasn't likely to have the money for a gift like this. Then I found the most precious treasure in the estate, in a writing desk that had been nearly signed. I found a locked drawer, singed. I think singed and signed are spelled the same. Interesting. Signed, singed. In a writing desk that had been nearly singed, I found a locked drawer. I allowed an aspect of my criminality to stretch its legs again, as I quickly and easily picked the lock. Inside were a stack of letters. They were love letters my mother had written to my father. They were kept in a study that no one entered after she had died. It was the ghost of my parents I was holding, in crackling yellow parchment. I took the letters with me, but didn't tell Albert what they were. He didn't ask. He respected that there was much about myself I wouldn't tell him yet, and much more I would never tell him, and he accepted that he had my present, and he didn't need to have my past. I savored the letters, reading them only one every week or two. There weren't many, and I knew I would all too soon run out. They were sweet, slight things, but each revealed an entire world of my mother that I had never known. Funny, full of love for her family, especially my grandmother, who organized the house while my grandfather was off handling diplomatic matters, or whatever it was the nobles spent their time doing when they traveled. I also learned from these letters that my mother had a younger sister who, at least as my mother told it, followed her around at all times, imitating my mother in that kind of worship that can happen between siblings on good terms. And of course there was my father, who she clearly loved so completely. She found my father deeply attractive, and at times I had to jump ahead in a litter, flushing as though I were a child peeking at them around the doorframe. Perhaps these were not my letters to read, but what else did I have left of my parents? Didn't I deserve at least this? I wasn't sure what I deserved, but I read them anyway, because more than anything, there was the language. My mother turned from concept to flesh as I discovered her sense of humor and the words she regularly used when she liked searching for the right turn phrase and what she liked. Dogs, red, sunlight reflecting off the water onto a leafy canopy of a tree, and what annoyed her, rats, celery, the short days of winter, her sister sometimes, but that last one with a taller blood. I was, for the first time, getting truly acquainted with a woman who had died so I could live. Although I'm sure if she were given that choice before they had conceived, she might have rethought things. Certainly, I would not have held it against her. Meanwhile, Albert and I talked through our wedding. It would have to be in a church so that it could be official, although neither of us had much patience for that. His worship, had always been around cultivation and soil, the feeling of calm on earth, the drift of pollen in the air. Mine was around the complications of the human mind. I had seen too many permutations of what we are capable of to believe in the necessity of someone else waving the baton. We were far too busy with the harvest to get to the wedding right away, and we decided on 6 months from then. I don't know why that amount of time. It's not like we had family and friends that needed to be arranged. My friends surely thought a sister, and was full of family gossip and stories from the royal court that she was visiting a neighbor in Ruthven. I smiled at the fondness in my aunt's words. How delightful to get to know my mother's sister, whom only a few months ago I had no idea existed. I noted, in my aunt, a fiercer streak of independence than my mother had perhaps given her credit for. She was a woman who would do fine in the world. I thought maybe my mother's sister was still alive, and that I may visit her someday to try and see some of my mother's face, my own face, in another person. But then I reached the end of my aunt's letter and saw her name, Nora. Nora, who was visiting Lufnar as a part of a marriage arrangement, because the family would not stand for both of their daughters married outside of nobility. Nora, who had become Lady Nora of Lufnar. My mother had a sister, Nora, whom I had ruined and then murdered. I felt Vlad's knife once again piercing my stomach. I had let my old life go, let Edmund go, let the Order of the Labyrinth and the Duke's own go, let it all go for my life with Albert. I did not cry upon seeing Nora's name. I only sat silently with the pain. I hope you have a rat day too, Hannah. I think you're gone already. Um, but maybe when you watch this, you'll be like, hey. Anyways, have a rat day whenever you're watching this. Whoever you are, even if you are Hannah Wilkes. You know, just just do it. I hope that happens. Chapter 3. Harvest. Passed in days. The physical labor was a blessing. A heft of the oranges inside of them, clusters of green and orange in these huge stacks, bundled into the brown sacks and loaded onto carts to be taken to the docks in cities. I welcomed these distractions because any time I had to myself, I went over and over what I had known about Lady Nora. All of my information had come from Edmund. It was Edmund who told me of her reputation and her crimes. Edmund who reported on her violent responses to what we had done. Edmund, always Edmund, and the men who had acted in the name of Lady Nora. When had I ever seen proof that they were Luftnarfian soldiers? Had I paid close attention to the accuracy of their uniforms? Or had I seen men who were paid by an evil man to come after me and my people and claim to do so on behalf of my aunt, so that I could be used as a tool against my own family? Edmund wasn't content with my father, or even with me. My father had threatened Edmund's ambition in the name of my father's family, so it was that family that Edmund had set out to fully destroy. First, he made me into his creature, a weapon of criminal intent, exactly what my father always feared. What my father always feared I would become. Then, as an act of pure sadism, he had turned that weapon upon my mother's sister, a noblewoman whose true reputation and personality, perhaps, I would never know. because I had so fully believed the vile woman that Edmund had created for me. I was a fool, and I was a monster for what I had done to my own family, as credulous and cruel as a child. The months passed, and the harvest was over, and the summer months were a series of sunny days that I considered blankly lost in the darkness within myself. Albert surely noticed my brooding and introspection, as he often brought me cheese or fresh pomegranates, and sat to talk with me when I was alone and quiet for too long. By that point he knew so much of my life, my crimes, my adventures, that I could not tell him about Nora. I could not tell him how I tormented and killed a family member out of blind vengeance, because I could let go of my father's death, and the loss of our home, and the betrayal of someone we trusted, and the years I wasted as a criminal. I could let go of my need for my revenge, and my ideas about what justice might look like. But with all of that behind me, I still had this guilt upon me. Did I deserve happiness after what I had done to Lady Nora? To my mother's little sister? I couldn't let go on her behalf. It wasn't mine to forgive. I wanted nothing more than to marry Albert, to live out this life around the soil and the sun, but I didn't think I deserved that. My face burned with anger at myself, at the world, and at Edmund. All I had let go over many years had returned to me at once. There had to be consequences for my crimes and for Edmund's. Or else, what hope was there for quiet, simple lives like Albert's? On the night I knew I would leave, I made dinner for Albert. I slaughtered the chicken, cooked it with orange peel and wine, summer vegetables, bread. I tried to communicate to him through the food I made. Usually he was the one who cooked. He accepted this turnaround in our duties without question, simply letting me go around the actions that, frankly, I was not as practiced at as him. "This is delicious," he said. "You're kind." "I am kind, but also this really is quite good." We sat on the porch and watched the last of the sunlight drift off from the sky as the ocean turned from a deep, turbulent blue to the silver of night. The evening was cloudless, and we looked at the stars in silence. I considered what I knew about the stars, which was nothing more than navigational markings upon a black ceiling, and felt a fluttering in the pit of my stomach at my ignorance. Now, all these years later, as I tell you this, I know everything about the stars, and the flutter is even worse for my knowledge. Wow. Um, that was a good one. Sorry, my brain is not working. "It's been better," he said, "since you came." I didn't let him see my tears. "You did fine without me." Fine is not enough sometimes. On the night I knew I would leave, we had sex twice. Once early in the evening, and then again after hours of sleep, when we both found ourselves awake during the long wait for dawn. It was tender, and it felt like we were both reaching for something beyond ourselves, something like the stars we had been looking at, something impossible to ever reach. And yet we strained for it together, and the pleasure made me sad, sadder the more intense the pleasure became. "What a lucky man I am," he said into his pillow. "What lucky people we are," I said, folding him under my arm onto my chest. "You're beautiful." It was the last time anyone would ever call me beautiful. On the night I knew I would leave, I left. It was as simple and brutal and awful as that. I got up from the bed in the early morning. I looked gently so as not to wake Albert. I took only a few possessions. Those things I had come with nearly 4 years earlier. I had no right to anything else. What I was doing was unforgivable, but it was precisely because I had already done the unforgivable that I needed to do it. Turning to get one last look at Albert, I saw that his eyes were open. He did not sit up from the bed. I knew this day would come, he said. I'm sorry, I said. True joy never lasts. We are lucky we had it, even for a while. I wish I could explain. Don't. Okay, I said. No, he said, sitting up. I mean, don't go. His dark eyes searched mine with the desperation of loss. It was beautiful. I never really appreciated how beautiful until that morning. Whatever it is you think you need to do, he said, decide not to do it. There is still time. Stay with me instead. I almost did. Chapter 4. The years on the sea did not let me down, and it was easy enough to get work on a ship. I cut my hair short and convinced the crew I was a merchant from a maritime family to explain my apparent expertise. Mostly I tried to keep to myself, which was easy enough to do as my sorrow was so complete that I had no interest in human company, and anyone looking for companionship could feel that I was not the place to find it. I did not have a specific destination in mind, since I had no idea where Edmund even was, and after my years away, I certainly did not feel prepared to face him. So I moved from port to port until I found myself stepping off a ship in Cagliari. Cagliari. Stepping off a ship in Cagliari, on the southeast coast of Sardinia, and for some reason not returning. There was no thought process behind the decision. I just saw the buildings climbing their way up the hill from the water, and I knew that it was time for me to leave the ship behind. I didn't speak the local languages, nor did I blend in very well, but since I had no interest in communicating with anyone, that worked out fine. The island shone a path, an invisible and incomprehensible path, but one I chose to follow. From the port I quickly moved north, coming to the great wilderness of Barbagia in the Sardinian mountains. Here I built myself a shelter, living off foraging and setting traps. I stopped paying attention to the passage of time, so I don't know how long I stayed there. There was a few villages nearby, close-knit. Many of the inhabitants were shepherds on the mountain fields. I got the feeling that more than a few of them were also bandits, but no one in those villages would ever talk about it to an outsider. They just trusted me, avoided me. I was a little afraid I'd be branded a witch, but the villagers were too busy dealing with the practicalities of survival to worry about that nonsense. And gradually, I was even able to trade with them, picking up bits of their language as I went. I would never be a local, but as the months passed, I got the feeling that I was gradually slipping under their cloak of silence, and that if anyone asked about me, not one of those villagers would talk. This gave me some feeling of safety, even though I was sure that Edmund would have no reason to be looking for me. In order to open my arms to Albert, I had to let go of Edmund and his many betrayals. But, alone once again in the mountains of central Sardinia, I embraced revenge. I practiced the fighting and surviving skills I had let lapse, and taught myself new skills. I worked on my strength, I worked on disguise, not only in clothing, but on physical movement and voice. I would talk. I would take long rides back to Calgary at times to listen to any news and hopefully to steal a book or two from wealthy travelers. I began to study things I had been too impatient and restless to learn before, but any time I felt myself grow tired and stopped for even a moment, I thought of Albert and felt a physical pain shoot through my body, and so I didn't give myself a minute of free time. My mind had to be always occupied. I lived in those mountains for at least as long as I had lived with Albert, probably a little longer, and then one night, alone in my hut, I heard footsteps outside, slow and stiff. I did not look outside to see who it was, because I knew who it was. It was a shambling man, blood down his shirt, face pale, mouth contorted into a groan. I still did not know who he was or what he meant, but he had returned to my life, and I knew that my time in Sardinia was up. It was time that Edmund paid his debts. I took one last trip to Calgary and boarded a ship heading for France. Paris was a different world than the one I had last visited during the height of Napoleon's reign. There were more people, for one, and the streets swelled from the surge. Modernity had touched the world at last. Gas street lights brightened the night, making darkness a little safer for the people. The flickering of the lights gave an unreality to Paris. It felt like I was telling myself a story about the city rather than walking through it. But then Paris is a city that has always been more story than place. The lights were only installed on the wealthiest streets so far, but those were exactly the streets I was heading toward. The house on Rue de la Chaussée d'Antin looked as tall and impressive as the first time I had seen it. Any signs of the violence from our last visit had long since been repaired and painted over, as distant now as the memory of it. Had we once been so young and stupid, running from soldiers paid by Edmund to impersonate the men of Lady Nora? The servant at the door squinted at me to see if he recognized my face, and when he didn't, the squint settled into a sneer. "No visitors today, I'm afraid," he intoned, and looked past me with the solemn expression of those who are not paid to be difficult. "Andre will want to see me." The man's smirk returned slightly, but still he did not deign to acknowledge my presence. So I kneed him in the balls and walked into the building. I figured I could sort it out with Andre once I saw him. The entrance hall was even more lavish than when I had last visited. Andre had always had expensive tastes, but in his older age, he really let himself indulge. He had taken over his family business, and it was thriving better than ever. There were silks from China, depicting landscapes and incredible creatures. I didn't know enough about the world yet to know if they were fanciful or the actual flora and fauna of that region. There were porcelain from the Dutch. From Lufnar, there were large granite bowls. That was what Lufnarian craftsmen made, and no one knew why or what exactly one was supposed to do with such a large granite bowl, but they did make them perfectly, and so people bought and displayed the useless things. Andre had eight. From Schwitz there were beautiful figurines of people screaming, which the rest of Europe found unnerving, but which Svitians reportedly found quite cute. And from Francia, mysterious and vacant land of arches, there were several lovely paintings of dogs and other domestic animals. No one knew who made these paintings, since not a soul lived in the entire country, but occasionally these paintings of undisputedly Francian origins would show up on the wine shops at exorbitant prices, and the rich and foolish would snap them up. I admired the five that Andre had acquired. "My God," I heard behind me. "A truly stunning collection," I said before Andre had swept me into a hug. "I thought you were dead. My God." He had grown older, as had I, and a little heavier, as happens with age, but he was absolutely himself. I started to cry. "Now, there, there," he said, sweeping me back against his shoulder and letting me ruin the expensive material of his jacket. The front door banged open, and the man who had finally recovered enough to walk came limping in. "That's her!" he shouted. "There's the criminal!" Gerald, we've all been criminals at some point in our lives. Gerald took in the affectionate way that Andre was treating me, and I saw his world crumble before him. "But, sir," "That'll be enough. Please shut up and go keep the actual riffraff out." "I. Very good, sir." He moved painfully back outside. "I did get him real good. You should have been nicer," I said. Ugh, Gerald has always been a fool. And for a few seconds, Andre considered me closely. "What?" he frowned. "You look a little less like yourself." "We all look different," I said. "Time is unforgiving." "No," he stared so long that it made me uncomfortable. "Your face is less so." "It's less my face?" "Yes." He shook his head as though to wake up from a dream. "Come, let's have a drink." The living area was as lavish as the entrance. In the years since Andre had returned to his family, and despite the tenor of their parting before, he had been accepted back once and made clear he was no longer working on the left side of the law. Despite their fears, the family had quickly regained their status in a social upheaval following Napoleon's defeat. "I hope you will be staying for some time," he said, as he poured the glass of the kind of wine I had not been able to afford since I had spent my last stolen coin. "Unfortunately not," I said. I felt heavy bringing this burden to him, but it was his burden too. "I came because we have committed a terrible act, and now we must make right what can be made right." I think I'm going to stop there. Cliffhangers as always. I'm curious what main character wants to do. I hope it's not something stupid, as she often does. But, you know, we'll see. I'm glad that she went back and found Andre. I'm hoping that this means Laura and Rebecca will also be back soon. I have honestly missed them a little. Um, yeah. Anyways, I hope whenever you watch this, you have a good time. I hope you're enjoying the story. I always say so many things. I should just say, I hope you have a good day. Even though I've already said that in the stream. But, yeah. Bye.